there's a portion that I like to kind of half read and half explain to you from Daraz's Naba al-Azim. He is setting out to establish the Quran's uniqueness, its i'jaz, its miraculous nature. And like many before him, one of the features that he points out is its arrangement. Now, this sounds so counterintuitive to a Western, to the Orientalists in particular. They said, the Quran is just a mumble jumble. It's just there's just no order to it at all. It's just desultory, just wanders all over the place. So Daraz, he wants to take the opposite tack. He says, no, the whole thing has a thematic unity, and each individual surah has a thematic unity. Now, it's fairly easy to identify thematic unity in a short surah like Qul Huwallahu Ahad. Of course, everybody would agree, okay, that has a thematic unity. But if you can prove thematic unity and tight structure in the longest surah in the Quran, which also was revealed over a very long period of time, and the different chunks of it, is revealed in over a long period of time. Therefore, for it to have thematic unity is it would seem improbable. And so, if you can prove the point with the longest surah that had the greatest amount of time in which it was revealed, then every other surah would be a simpler task. So he argues that Al-Baqarah encompasses the widest variety of meanings. It comprises the largest number of installments, as well as the longest time intervals separating its intermittent revelations. No matter what multiplicity of propositions the surah might comprise, it is a systematic discourse, kalamun wahid, whose beginning confirms its end and vice versa, and which in its totality embraces one and the same purpose, just as sentences hold together to express one single proposition. He identifies four major themes, an introduction and a conclusion, which make up the overall structure. So now his introduction is, he identifies it as being verses 1 to 20. And its theme is the nature of the Quran, a general description of its main features, with an emphasis on the lucidity of its message, and the different types of people with regard to it are identified and their salient characteristics clarified. Now, if you note that Al-Baqarah comes obviously right after Al-Fatiha, and Al-Fatiha is essentially a prayer for guidance, and then right after that prayer for guidance, you have the mysterious letters, and then you have ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ. That guidance you're looking for is this book. هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. It's guidance for a certain group of people. So it identifies the believers and their characteristics. It identifies those who are outright rejectors of the message, their characteristics, and then it identifies the hypocrites. So that's his introduction. The first section is from verses 21 to 25. The first major theme of the surah is introduced here, which is that the Quran invites all mankind to embrace Islam. Ya ayyuhan nasu u'budu rabbakum alladhi khalaqakum. O mankind, worship your Lord. And that verse, that passage ends with verse 25, and give good tidings to those who believe and do good works. And then 26 to 39, he says this is a flashback. And this it returns to describing the guidance of the Quran and to expound its approach in calling people to its eternal truths. It starts with the passage, "Inna Allah la yastahyi an yadriba mathala." Indeed, Allah is not shy to present an example of a ba'udah, a mosquito, or a gnat. And then it ends with the story of Adam. I mean, it includes the story of Adam, and the end of that story is the end of this section, according to him. To me, I would sort of have a quibble with that. Verses 21 to 29 would be, for me, a section, and then 30 to 39, starting with Allah's mentioning to the angels, informing the angels that he will create a Khalifa. So the opening of the story of Adam is a prelude to the story of the children of Israel. And so I would see the start of the story of Adam as presenting historical context for the message. So you have the creation of mankind, and then you have the first major community that received a message and a covenant, the story of Adam then provides a prelude to the story of the Bani Israel, and there are some parallels there between privileged position of Iblis and then his fall due to pride, privileged status of the Bani Israel, and then their fall. But that's Daraz, he points out that verses 40 to 162, they deal with the Bani Israel, the covenant of the Jews and how they failed, but it doesn't start with an attack. It starts with an invitation. It invites them. But here's a second chance. You kind of messed up a bit, but you can make it all good. And so it involves, a lengthy discussion of what kind of mistakes they made, and calls upon them to change, to fix themselves, and it warns the Muslims. These are pitfalls in the path. These are examples not to be followed. And then verses 163 to 177, he says this is a prelude to Unit 4, in which 3 points are stressed: the oneness of the worshipped Creator, the oneness of the Commander. I understand from that to mean the Prophet ﷺ, and a general introduction of the divine commands. That general introduction being ليس البر أن تولوا وجوهكم قبل المشرق والمغرب. A discussion of the nature of righteousness, of bir, piety. And then verses 178 to 283, very lengthy unit with elaboration, exposition of the detailed rules and laws of Islam meant to regulate human conduct and affairs. And then the fourth theme, just in a single verse, لِلَّهِ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ. To Allah belongs whatsoever is in the heavens and whatsoever is in the earth, and whether you make known what is in your minds or hide it, Allah will bring you to account for it. He will forgive whom He wills, and He will punish whom He wills. Allah is able to do all things. So the theme that he extracts from that is that it points out the religious spiritual force, in Arabic the wazi', that motivates man to comply with the rules and laws and restrains him from disobeying them. So that's appropriate after a lengthy discussion of rules. And then the conclusion Amin Rasul and the final two verses of Al-Baqarah are a description of the qualities of those who have accepted the divine message and complied with its teachings, and highlights the rewards awaiting them both in this life and hereafter. And earlier, maybe about a month ago, I was reading Taraz's book, and he's got this excellent chapter, just one of the finest concentrated treatments of what is Islam all about? What is the Quranic message? He's got one whole chapter devoted to that, and he strings verses together just with such clarity. And in the course of that, he addresses shubuhat, misconceptions, and specious arguments that are brought against this message, and he answers them with Quranic verses. Just really fine. And I went back to look for it. The UIA, University of Islam in Tarabangsa, where I'm studying in Malaysia, has one of the best tafsir sections any library I've seen. Unfortunately, there's always people checking the books out, so I couldn't find the book to give you examples of that. But let's carry on. Mustansir Mir, he points out the accomplishments and the ideas of a string of scholars from the Indian subcontinent. The first whom he mentions is Hamid ad-Din al-Farahi, who died in 1930, and his student, Amin Ahsan Islahi, who died in 1997. They had this very vigorous contention that the Quran has a thematic unity and every surah has a thematic unity, and they went into great depth about identifying the structure of the Quran. Islahi has a tafsir called Tadabburi Quran, which I think was written in Urdu. So he does a detailed sort of development of Farahi's ideas. Apparently Farahi didn't really produce a tafsir per se, but he produced a tafsir methodology. I mean, he wrote on how to approach tafsir. Anyway, Islahi apparently did an entire tafsir in which he showed that the Quran possesses unity at several levels. The verse sequence in each surah deals with a well-defined theme in a methodical manner. The surahs, as a rule, exist as pairs. He identified 82 out of 114. For example, Baqarah and Ali Imran, Al-An'am, Al-A'raf. Although he didn't mention it, Mir went back to mention it. Al-Anfal and Toba are a clear example. To the extent that there's some question about the Shiites actually believe that they're one surah. At least that's a position among the Shiites. And by the way, they also consider Surah Al-Duha and Al-Inshirah to be one surah, and they consider Surah Al-Fil, Lam Tara Kayfa Fa'ala Rabbuk, that one, and Li'ilafi Quraysh to also be a single surah. Anyway, that's a point of view among them. I don't know if they all say that. And of course, you can see it's clear as day with certain those examples that I gave. They're so closely related that the Shiites consider them to be those pairs to be units. And Surah Al-Falaq and Surah Al-Nas, they're called al-Mu'awwadhatayn. They're obviously closely related. Anyway, so Al-Islahi says that these surahs occur in pairs and that the pairs share complementarity. And what he means by that is that they have the same central theme or topic, but they treat that topic differently. And so he identifies various ways in which complementarity can work. brevity and detail. For example, one surah will present an idea in brief, and the next surah will present it in detail. An example of that he gives is An-Nahl presents briefly the message of Islam before the pagan Arabs and the Jews, warning them against rejecting it. But Surah 17, which is Surah Al-Isra, elaborates the message and gives a detailed warning. Also, An-Nahl only alludes to the impending emigration to Medina, while Al-Isra talks about it explicitly. Another example, Surah Al-Muzammil informs the Prophet ﷺ that Allah will soon lay a heavy responsibility upon his shoulders, and Surah Al-Mudaththir explains the nature of that responsibility. And obviously, Muzammil and Mudaththir they're obviously a linked pair from the title and the time of revelation, all that, their proximity in the Quran.